Hello, everyone. I'm Pamela Marshall at the Wellness Radio TV and at the Wellness Radio TV podcast. Tonight, you are with us on Sisters of Wellness. This is unprecedented times that we are in so many ways, and we won't start listing them because you already know all about them. But what I want you to do is get ready to feel and receive some information that I know will be inspiring to you and that will help you along the way to see things that you're doing right now and then perhaps see what you can do another way. And my guest tonight, live from New York, it's Emileena Pedigo.
Nice.
Hey, live from New York.
I'm ready. Yeah. I'm probably not as entertaining as the live from New York.
Hey, let's not sell yourself short.
Yeah, right. That's right.
I got to be a person of my word.
Yeah.
You got to live up to it.
All right, you got it. I'm up for it.
So look, how's the weather there, first of all, because it got cold here in Florida tonight.
Yeah, I heard that you guys are getting kind of a cold front. It's snowing at least 2 feet, I think. It's crazy. You can't even see the cars. So it's a white wonderland right now. Yeah.
So how much are you anticipating getting? How much do you think you guys are going to get? Have you been out today?
2 feet. Yeah, I did go out in it. You know, I like to go out at least once a day to feel human. So I kind of trucked through it a little bit. It's nice. It's nice right now. You know, once the cars come back, there was no cars out. And so once the cars come back and make it all dirty, then,
yeah,
you know, it's not going to be as pretty. But today it's gorgeous. Everything is covered.
So enjoy it while you can.
Exactly.
Emelina, really, thank you so much for being a part of our show tonight. Sisters of Wellness, our goal with Sisters of Wellness is to sow love and wisdom and to share some of our life experiences with other people who are watching so they too can be inspired. And you are so inspiring. You started a production company in New York City. You know the song, "If I Can Make It in New York, I Can Make It Anywhere," of course?
Yeah, that's what they say. I mean, right?
You've been there for 20 years. You didn't leave.
Almost 20 years. Yeah, I have not left. But, you know, now it's like an addiction, I feel like. I probably should have left multiple times, but I can't get away. I mean, you know, once you get used to the grind, you know, it's hard to give up, I find.
So you left the West Coast to go to the East Coast, you know, so LA, you know, and Hollywood and all of that. And you wanted to go to New York to be in, as they say, that racket.
Yeah, pretty much. The Great White Way, you know, Broadway. That's
Broadway.
Where I was headed for.
And then started your own production company, The Show Goes On.
Yeah, exactly.
So in that name, do you think that's part of your stick-to-itiveness that kept you to the grind there in New York?
Oh my goodness, totally. There's definitely more than one occasion where I thought I wanted to cancel an event or somebody involved wanted to cancel it. And I said, we can't cancel. The name of my company is The Show Goes On. We've got to find a way to make it work. And it's, you know, when I first started out, it was actually my sister's idea for a name of a company because of the Queen song, you know, "Show Must Go On." So it was just kind of a joke, but it's turned into be really my mantra now, you know, and I originally I thought about "The Show Must Go On," but as an email address, it looked like "The Show Must Goon." So I was like, that's not quite what I'm going for, but I like that it goes on because the idea is that it's like present, it's happening, and whatever's happening, you know, it fits right into all of my work now that I had no idea where I was going in the beginning. So, but I mean, I've always had this drive to keep, you know, no matter what roadblocks come in my way, how many times I have to pivot, and I've pivoted a lot, you know, I keep it going. So the show is no longer, you know, in a venue. It's all here in the four sides of my screen, but it is definitely still going on in some fashion.
And you authored a book, #Another Way, or you just put hashtag there? Is that the name of it? Is it #Another Way?
Well, no, the hashtag I don't put in the title, but I use the hashtag everywhere else because I'm branding it. I want people to think of the book ideally when they see another way. Because the idea is that there is always another way. Speaking of pivoting, and and that's the whole point of the book. Another way, the Tao of artist development.
Right. Another way. And as you say, we have all, let's see, let me just make sure that we are here. I want to make sure that we are live.
Oh, that's always good. It says live.
It does say live. And I'm looking for it on my page because I want to make sure that it's there. And I think I just needed to refresh my page. Now I'm looking over here to the side, which is okay because I think that I want to make sure that people are seeing this because
We got some good stuff to say.
Some excellent stuff. So first of all, because we are in this place that the Creator selected us to be in this space along our journey for such a time as this. How do you feel? How do you feel inspired in a time like this, Emelina?
Oh, it's a great question, actually, because, I started writing the book and started using hashtag another way before the pandemic. And I feel like when the pandemic hit, it was almost like the universe saying, keep doing this is right for you. Keep doing it. It just totally played into my messaging, and I feel like my messaging before the pandemic was the same things. There's always another way and you don't have to be stuck into this one route. But when the pandemic hit, people were literally forced to try another way. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden, whatever resistance I had to it before became a little less. And so I'm actually very grateful for this moment and for the fact that so many people now are really embracing that, finding their own way. I'm a big fan of the DIY movement and this idea of building your own moment. And with the pandemic, all these entrepreneurs, I feel like, are coming out of nowhere, which is really exciting. And everyone's, doing it their own way. So I'm just very grateful to be here where I think is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah. One of the things that I heard you say was in between controversies, there is an opportunity.
Oh, did I say that? I love that. I like the way you said it much better if I did say it. Yeah. I agree with it.
So because, my heart and prayers go out to family members and friends and people across the globe who have lost loved ones.
Absolutely.
Due to COVID. It seems as if I hear about somebody almost every week, whether directly or indirectly through someone I know or through someone my husband knows. So this is a very, very difficult time when it comes to the pandemic. And then we add on top, it's almost as if the universe decided, let me show you how much you can take. Mm-hmm. Because we're in this political climate and there's 74 million people who think they're right. And there's 78 million people who think they're right. And we're all Americans. And everybody is committed to believing that they're right. Mm-hmm. Emelina, if you can come up with a way of bringing the 74 and the 78 together.
Well, my answer to everything is Taoism, first of all, because one of the things why I was drawn to the Tao is because all things fit together simultaneously in peace within the Tao, so I don't believe that any one of those people on either side is wrong. It's just different. And there is a way that, I mean, I certainly am not the person to do it. I don't think it works, but you know, I think we all play our own part.
Come on,
bringing
receive
everyone
it, receive it, receive it, receive it,
Yeah.
receive it.
I do believe there is a place for it all within the Tao, you know, because Tao, and really what the Tao is about balance.
Mhm.
And we cannot have one without the other. So there is a place for everything and everyone. And it's scary to accept when somebody has a complete different opinion from us, you know, and especially when it's opposites. But I'm hesitant to judge that. I would rather just accept it as is and coexist. And actually what I struggle with is when I feel I'm starting to be pulled, and when I have to make a statement to one side or the other. You know, I really like this in-between place, this Tao where all things are coexist.
All things coexist.
In harmony.
And are you saying that where we need to be is just understanding that no two people are always going to agree?
Yes. Yes.
So,
We don't have to change anyone. We're so busy trying to change and convince and all this stuff and fight. But actually, it's, you know, just be. That's what I would say. Just be.
so you froze up a little. You said we're all convinced that we're supposed to try to change each other. So can you say that part again?
Sure. Yeah. I feel like we're fighting and we're trying to convince other people and, you know, and there's a lot of arguments happening, and I'm certainly not against debate, healthy debate. You know, I believe in that. I believe in conversation, but I also believe in just letting each other be however we are, however imperfect we are, however, whatever love, like however blind we may be to something, you know, we can, that's okay. We all belong in the Tao.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you went away on a retreat. So you're working in New York. You started a production company. You're a producer. You're planning events. You're in the hustle and bustle of the Big Apple, and you go on this retreat. Tell us about the retreat that you went on.
Yeah, well, you know, it took a lot to get there. You know, the thing about New York is that when you're in that grind, it's really hard to see outside of it because you're just working so hard to survive, you know? And also it's easy to get overstimulated because there's so much happening. There's an event every day of the week, you know? And so, and I love taking things in and learning new stuff. So I was going to events on top of trying to have my own hustle. I was going to events 3 to 5 times a week. So it's just, I wasn't taking a lot of time out for me. So that was not sustainable. So it all kind of came to a head, kind of came crashing down when I realized I really needed to get out of the hustle and bustle. So that's how I ended up in this retreat in Peru. You know, in nature, and, you know, I was in this, on like this hilltop retreat center, which was like a hut. We were staying in these little huts, you know, and down below there was this creek and there were llamas walking around, alpacas, and, you know, wild animals. It was so wonderful. It was the exact opposite of New York City. And it was everything I needed to just get an outside perspective, to remember that there is another way. You know, it's not all about the work and the grind. And, you know, if things hadn't kind of come to a head for me, if things kind of hadn't crashed down a little bit, I don't think I had that perspective. And so, you know, again, like, I'm just so grateful that I was able to get out. You know, I put the whole trip on credit because I really needed it and I knew I needed it. And it was everything I wanted it to be, actually, which, again, I'm so grateful. You know, my mom at the time was like, you know, there are no silver bullets. So I don't know what you're expecting when you're going to Peru. And I wasn't really sure either, but it was exactly what I needed.
There is a saying that when the student is ready, the teacher will show up.
Yes.
And you obviously, Emelina, was ready. My guest tonight is Emileena Pedigo. She is an author, a spiritual coach, and started a company 20 years ago. The show goes on. She is in New York City. And, this effort, this desire to help people, artists in particularly artists, see that there's another way, because things have come to a screeching halt for so many artists.
Mm.
And not just because of, COVID, but I consider things coming to a halt when they decided to take the arts out of schools. And
This
budgets
was
were
years
cut.
ago.
Years ago. They
Yes.
started taking the arts out of school, which I think is one of the greatest mistakes that educators, that school boards across the country could have made, because I think creativity is at the seed, is at the base, is the root of all of the rest of the learning that we're going to do, is this gift that the Creator gave us. And from that, we can do math and science and history. But this stimulation to think is called the arts.
Yes.
And so you are working to help other artists see this moment in time in another way. How are you doing that?
Yeah. Well, my main thing is demonstration. I really believe in being the change you wish to see. I'm very inspired. I was very inspired and am very inspired by the whole nonviolence movement. And I talk about it a lot actually in my book, and how I believe that when systems are failing you, which happens a lot with artists, starting with the cuts to education, as you're talking about, that the only way to make systematic change is one artist at a time, as I say, or one person at a time. And so, that's what brought me into artist development, because I figured if I can work with artists, if I can kind of empower artists, and this is why I like the DIY, because again, with the systems that are in place to serve artists are just coming up short. Let's put it that way. Exploitation runs rampant within the arts across discipline. And the nonprofits that are doing a lot of good work are just falling short, because they're also being squeezed for funding from, the federal level, which is part of the level that's cutting the funding to the arts and education. So it's all just coming up short. And so that's why I advocate for artists to take their career into their own hands and to find their own way, which is another way, basically. And so that's the work that I do, is teach them basically how to be a business, how to bridge the arts and business. So #ArtsMeetsBiz. And which is scary for a lot of artists, because we're not taught that in art school. They don't teach business. And traditionally, artists are looking to somebody else to do their business for them, whether it be a record label or a manager, agent, gallery owner, or a nonprofit, whoever it is, it's somebody else that usually does the business for an artist. So that's the divide that I'm trying to bridge, so that we can create more healthy artists, sustainable artists, instead of these like one-hit wonders, who are independent and sustainable. And then slowly we've rebuilt the arts scene, and then collectively, hopefully, we've got a change happening.
And doing it, as your book titles, doing it another way. And going back to the source that gave you the gift to do what you're doing anyway.
Yes. Well, and that's part of having your own business. It's like Entrepreneur 101 is like, why do you want to do this? And make sure it is aligned with your life path. Because if you want to, have a family life, for instance, and yet you want to be on the road all the time, that might be a conflict. So when you're building your own business, you really need to marry the two. And it's a lot of spiritual work, actually, because if you want to be sustainable, especially as an artist, for performing artists, their body is their product. So if their body is not healthy, you can't sustain being on the road playing shows every single night, or whatever it is, and even for visual artists, who can get so consumed by the work that they forget to sleep or they
Mm.
forget to eat, you know? And so I think the spiritual component is actually the key to sustainability.
And when you mentioned, the artist, this is their tool. What's
Yes.
going on here and in the heart.
Yes.
My cousin Josette Jenkins Golette is watching. She's a seamstress. And
Oh,
yeah, speaking and designer. She's a designer, incredible fashions.
that's
But
an
guess
artist.
what? She's producing a fashion show that's going to be live February 28th. I'll send you the link so you can join.
Please do. I would love to see that. Yeah. She's doing it herself. So she's already doing it another way. So I will congratulate her on that and finding a way to do it.
She and her
Especially during a
husband
pandemic. That's
Bo.
awesome.
Say again.
Especially during a pandemic, to be able to produce a whole fashion show, that's incredible.
Produce a fashion show, and she's continuing to sew. She's posting what she's doing. Then when I think about artists who have theaters here in Gainesville, Florida,
Oh, yeah.
Rhonda Wilson has the Star Center, and then in Memphis, um, Ekandaya has Hattie Lou Theater, and they've been doing theater online. And so
Yeah.
let me just say this. Let me plug the arts.
Yeah.
Anybody that you know that is a performer, um, support them. Even if you don't have a chance to see what they do,
Please.
make a donation
Mm.
because we want them to be there when this pandemic is over. And the only way that they can be there, it takes revenue. So please do whatever you can. And you know what? It's such a uniter.
The arts. Yeah.
Imagine, yeah, the arts. Because
Yeah. And
you
I'd also
can't fight each other when you're singing and dancing.
Well, right, exactly. It's incredible. Well, first let me just say on the financial thing that in addition to supporting, so many people in their own businesses, for instance, when it comes to anything creative, that's where the budget goes low. And they think that they can get the artist or, whether it be for graphics or whatever it is, for cheaper, or they don't want to pay that person. Oh, I'll just get a young artist for exposure. That mindset is really rampant. And that's what I think also needs to change. So in addition to actually paying artists that you see, hire artists as part of your business and pay them equal to your web designer, who also is probably an artist actually, but still, I think put them on equal playing field. I think that's important. But as far as the arts being so good for our souls and our society, I think that it's amazing that there's this disconnect that most people will acknowledge the value that arts have in their life, just like going to the movies or watching TV and how important that is to most people. And yet we're not supporting them,
Right.
and they're all suffering and they're all hurting, and actually I just saw this interview with Billie Eilish's brother, whose parents, were both actors. And so even with Billie Eilish being at the height of her career, her parents are like, we don't know how long this is going to last. We need to save this money, and it's like, that's the mentality of artists that, even you could be in a Broadway show for 5 years and the second it closes, you're broke. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So there's just not a lot of sustainability and we don't realize it. And yet so many people that's the highlight of their trip to New York, is going to see that Broadway show. So, it's really important to acknowledge how the arts move us spiritually.
Oh, yeah. And those are humans. You're not just going to the zoo, walking away.
Exactly.
There's nobody there to keep feeding them after you leave.
Right. Yeah.
I think sometimes that's how we are with entertainment and entertainers.
Yeah.
All we want is that hour, 2 hour window that they're giving us. And we don't think about continuing to support the arts. And let me tell you, actually tonight, I spoke with, his name is Little Jake. He's been performing since he was 15 years old, or before then. But when he was 15 years old, he was asked to perform at the University of Florida. They have an event during homecoming called Gator Growl.
Okay.
Little Jake, African-American, 15 years old. He was like the little Richard kind of rock and roll kind of guy, but it's soul music.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, the University of Florida was segregated. And he told them that he would not perform there unless people who look like him could attend.
I love that.
They brought the president in, and they agreed to put bleachers in the back. This was like 1960, 1961. They
Wow.
put bleachers in the back so that the Black people could come, but they sat in the back. But he said before his concert was over, Black and white people were dancing together. So Emelina, what you're doing in inspiring those in the arts has an incredible potential of inspiring all of us.
Yes.
As we see the need to embrace artists. And when people are on stage performing for us, we don't ask them their political affiliation.
Right.
We're just trying to do the
yeah, we're just
right?
being moved. Yeah.
Being moved.
Yes, yes.
Can we just do that?
Yeah.
How does this help to translate into the audience this another way? Seeing this all of this that we're going through in another way.
Yeah. Well, I define art in my book as an expression of the self in relation to the environment. And anyone can do that. So I actually really believe that we all have an artist within. So I think, and in some ways, this kind of being moved to dance, if you will, is bringing out that artist within a little bit. So, and I think too, when you realize that we all kind of have that within us, we all can be moved by art, then it's also kind of breaking down those barriers a little bit, as you're saying, uniting and bringing us together. And I think that's, there's a place for all of us within the Tao, and that's what arts is like showing us. And I think it's a really great reminder of that. So for the people who are in the audience, I think I don't like this us versus them mentality. Personally, I think that's part of the problem. So instead of looking at the artists on stage as another, as this outside kind of monkey, sometimes, however you look at them performing for you, they are actually just like you. And you have that within you as well, as far as the viewer goes. And so I think that is how the spectator can find their another way, is to just realize that they're just like you. They're just following it. It might not be medicine. It might not be law or politics. It's arts. And in my mind, they're equal. They should be equal. They're just as important.
Yeah. Emelina, you've also stepped into the space of being a spiritual coach. How did that journey to Peru influence that decision for you?
Interesting. Well, I didn't know for a long, when I got back from Peru, I felt like at the time was like this spiritual being. I was in a bubble of love, I feel like, for a long time. And I didn't feel a need to pursue anything, actually, which felt really good. Some days I miss that. But I have it within me and I can tap into it at any time. So it was kind of a process for me to realize what to do with it, because I was moved to make a change, within the arts specifically, because that's where I came up and that's what I knew. And so that's kind of how I came around to being a coach anyways. And then the spiritual component of it is I didn't know how to teach, for instance, sustainability without that spiritual component. Like especially within the arts, when you're using your body, it's so personal. It's such a personal experience, that that tool, as you said earlier, needs to be, maintained and cleaned. And the best way to do that is through spiritual practice, whatever that practice is and however you do that. So that's kind of how the spirituality came into my work. And I was very slow to promote it as spiritual work. And even now, I think I'm more so, I've started to more and more, especially as I use the Tao, because I don't know how to talk about sustainability without talking about the Tao, because that is where all the balance is. And as artists, anyone is striving for balance. But with artists, we're looking for this balance between having to crunch numbers and being able to create. and having to like maybe work a day job, which I don't really believe in, but that's a whole nother story, and pursue our art, but it's about balance, sleeping and creating and all of this. And so I didn't know how to talk about it without bringing in the spiritual component. And then actually when the pandemic happened and there was all these calls to light workers, and I was like, oh, I guess that's kind of what I'm doing. And it feels right. And it feels good. And it felt like a good time to kind of step up and own the spiritual component of it. And I feel like I might have lost some people in that transition. But again, it's more important in my mind to be the change, because we got to start at some point, one artist at a time, making that change, or else it's never going to infiltrate the industries, where there's so many problems. So I think that's kind of how my journey was.
Yeah. So I think sometimes as Americans, when we hear a word that does not fit into our English language norm, we start to get uncomfortable or think it's like woo, 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 woo.
Yes. That is very
like
true.
The Tao.
Yeah.
And spirituality.
Yes.
Even though the Bible says that we should worship in spirit and in truth, there is so little discussion about who we are spiritually. And there's something that I read that talked about how we are much more spirit than we are physical. But all of our attention is focused on the physical and less on the spiritual. And I think that's what divides us, because if I don't know you and you don't know me and you just see me and you have a dislike for me and you don't even know who I am, you definitely are just looking at the physical.
Yes, absolutely. Whereas on the spiritual level, there's less of a divide, I feel like. Right? There just is.
Right,
I mean,
right.
I'm also an empath, so I feel everything. Everything is about feeling to me. And that's just how it feels to me. Like I can feel differences physically between you and I, but on the spiritual level, it just feels much more like I can connect. And that's why I like that spiritual level, because the connection just comes so much easier. And obviously, we're able to make that connection through our work.
Right.
Our work too.
I think, so tell people about the Tao, because they hear that and goes like, is she talking about another God? And people get so uncomfortable. We're 4.2% of the world population, and we think that there's only a spiritual life in the 50 states of the United States.
Right. Or in Christianity, actually.
Or in Christianity.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, again, there's, the Tao does not discount anything, any other religion. Oh, did I lose you?
No, I just made you full screen.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, cool. Anyways, yeah. So the Tao is I think of it more of a philosophy than a religion, but it was born out of kind of a response to the rigidness of Confucianism, which was really, Confucianism was also a lot about the military, and in school, it was in schools, and it was very militaristic. And so it's very rigid. And then the Tao came about, and the Tao was, again, like everything is okay. It all fits within the Tao. Everything is good. And I wouldn't say I practice. Well, I guess I do, but it's hard to explain exactly what Taoism is. And the best, which is why I love books like The Tao of Pooh. Because when we can see examples of it, we get it. So like Winnie the Pooh is a perfect example of like a Taoist, actually, his actions and the way he thinks, which is very innocent, actually. But in the book, The Tao of Pooh, in the foreword, the author says it's very hard to put into words what the Tao is, but when you know it and when you feel it and when you're aligned in it, which you can be whatever religion you're in. It's just a matter of aligning with your authentic self, your higher self, and owning that, then you are in the Tao, when you are in complete balance. And then I would say Taoism is about trying to live a life in complete balance in that place, which allows for everything, which is very challenging. I think a big part of it is giving up judgment, which is very hard. I have found, like, I feel like there was definitely a moment, especially when I got back from Peru, where I really didn't feel judgment for anything, but I found it challenging to have conversations with people, without using kind of judging words, and to live my life without judgment. So there is a balance even with that, even with trying to live within the Tao, being in New York City, where, as you say, nobody even knows what Taoism is. But here I am not even answering your question directly, because it's very hard to explain what Taoism is, other than, to me, it's about balance. There's a lot of literature on it that gets a little bit more esoteric, but all of the language is always about being in the present. So it's what is, and be, you can be. And I think being in the present, being aligned, that is what Taoism is. And that's why you can be whatever religion you are and still be there.
Well, what you just said, Emelina, is really biblically based, and you can also find it in the Quran.
Yes. Exactly.
And I think what happens is that there are groups under these umbrellas that can take it all to the extreme and distort it to make people feel like, I don't want to be a part of that, or I don't want to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
When there is, just as in the Bible, it says to have childlike faith.
Mm-hmm.
And so think about when we're children.
Yes.
And every day is a great day, because we don't have bills, we don't have the student loan, we don't have the spouse to argue with, or we don't have the job to go to, or we don't have children looking at us, we don't have taxes to pay. It is just a great day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as Wayne Dyer would say, attaching to nothing.
Yes, the nothingness. I've heard it kind of called, the Tao's like this nothingness.
Yeah.
I also heard it explained once as like a divinity. If most religions have a divinity, but like a god, and the divinity in the Tao, in Taoism, is the Tao. It is your Tao. It is your unique path, and that is the divinity, which I think is kind of like in the Bible. They say we are made in His image,
and likeness. That's love.
Exactly.
Joy and peace.
Yeah.
And so it just happened that that's in another part of the world that understanding came about, and it was called that. But in the great universe, it is the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Josette asked, where does it come from, and what's the source? The source is the source.
The source would be the Tao. All things are the Tao.
The creator.
And it is within us.
Yeah.
So I would say, in some ways, I mean, we are, it's like we are made in His image. So we are Him, but we are also in His image, but we are a piece of Him. And so the Tao is the path, if you will, or the source that is the same part, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And in the scriptures, it says, if you keep your mind stayed on the Creator, I will keep you in perfect peace.
Which makes sense, because you're zoning in on the part that is the same. Yeah.
And that's our goal, is to not see this stuff. It doesn't belong to me.
Right.
And it doesn't belong to you.
Right.
So I don't have to fight you over it.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, it's essential. I believe that it is essential to have all these differences, because we are all interdependent on each other, and we cannot exist without the other. That's why judgment is so hard for me, because it's like, well, we have to have the bad in order to have the good. So I'm grateful for that bad, because I would have never known the good if I hadn't experienced the bad. And I will say, just in response to where did it come from, it did start in China, and actually Lao Tzu, who wrote the Tao Te Ching, which is the closest thing to a holy book that Taoism has, but the Tao Te Ching is really like a book of poetry. I feel like, so definitely pick it up. It's very simple and easy to read. And Lao Tzu is just no one's really sure who wrote it, but he's the most reputed author, basically, which I like to compare to Shakespeare, because, no one really knows if Shakespeare was one person or a bunch of people or whoever he was. So same with Lao Tzu. But Lao Tzu's story is actually similar to the Buddha. So there's a lot of similarities in Buddhism too, because he left kind of a well-to-do family. He went on this journey of being isolated out in nature, and that's when he supposedly wrote the Tao Te Ching.
And even in all of these stories, and when we think, and I have to go back to the book that I know more about, and that's the Bible.
Yeah.
And the scripture says that we are overcome by the words of testimonies. And so in those stories that you're talking about, those are testimonies.
Yes.
And those testimonies say to us what we have the power to do.
Yes. And I think it's, we need the different testimonies. We need the different religions, because people resonate with different things. But again, I believe that the messaging is all more or less the same.
It really is.
And at the core.
Oh yeah. And that's the only place we should be, though, Emelina.
Yes, I agree.
The only place we should be is at the core.
Yes. And that is love too. I also describe it as
love.
As a universal love. I discovered that in Peru. Like, I had never known love before. And that's really where I want to be. It's hard to stay there. It's a challenge. Life is a challenge, but that's also the beauty of life, is that it does try to pull us off this path. And for me, I talk about the power of 3, because it's that bounce. If we're talking about judgment, good, bad, the balance of going to one side, to the other, and then back to the middle. And that's why 3 is so important. And the middle is that's the Tao, but that's also this core, like we're talking about. That's love, real love. I mean, there's romantic love, and then there's familiar love, family love, but then there's this source love that is,
the infusion of that does not separate.
Yes. Where there are no separations. Yes.
Right. And here I go back to the scripture that tells us about loving, and then loving because we're instructed to love, not because of anything that you've done for me, but I am just commanded to love as I've been loved by the Creator. So imagine us getting to that place. And that I remember once talking to my child who was in one of his moments, and I said, you know what? You can't hurt me anymore.
Yes. That's really powerful. And it's true.
Because I get to decide.
Yeah. And you can still love him.
Oh, I do.
Yes.
That's why he can't hurt me anymore.
Yes, exactly.
I love him. And as my uncle said about my father at his eulogy, he said, you can't hate Lindsay more than he loved you.
See, and that's power. That's like real power. I think that power of love, of when you're coming from a place of love. I was working with this artist who was really attached to money, and he was really just wanting to make money. And he said, what's more powerful than money? I said, what's more powerful than money? Love. Love is the most powerful power that you can have, Yeah. It's more powerful than politics. It's more powerful than money. It's more powerful than, anything else.
So you've written this book, and as you were writing it, did you have anything in mind of what you hope to accomplish as a result of writing it?
No, I still don't really know, to be honest with you. I'm really living, I'm trying to stay here in the Tao, in the moment, in the present, and just be guided by my heart and be guided by my soul, and let that, like, I knew there's never been a doubt, as I've had a lot of doubts over the years of me writing it, but I've never had a doubt that I needed to write it. And at one point I was like, I just need to get this book out of me, and then I can decide what I'm going to do, because it's just so strong. I really believe that when it is out, that my path will become clearer, I mean, I know I'm a coach, and I know I meant to work with artists, and I know I meant to demonstrate another way, but I don't know the details yet. And I think that's faith. Part of that is faith and trusting, and really believing, fingers crossed. It's also terrifying, by the way, but I think it's the only way to go, because I also believe that time is relative. So as long as I can be fulfilled and grateful in this moment right now, then it really doesn't matter where I'm at in the future. I will automatically be grateful if I'm still grateful. You know what I mean? It's just one moment at a time. And I think that's so important, because it gets overwhelming, for people to, especially, and that's one of the great things about that the pandemic showed us, is that it's impossible to plan. How do you plan for the future?
Yeah.
Like when I was in school, there was no Google. So how did you plan for a job at Google? And yet that was the best job 5 years later, like everybody wanted to get into Google. So it's like, if we can't plan for the future because it's so unpredictable and so unstable, then all we can do is really live 100% fully in this moment. And that to me is where I want to stay.
Yeah, in this moment, the last one is gone, and the next one's not here yet.
Right.
And in the moment of the breath. How do you help people get there who face all of these real challenges that exist? And there's some real challenges right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, grief and, fear and pain and suffering. Yes, absolutely. That's how I found it personally. So I think that grief and pain and suffering really is a gift in disguise. And I think as far as this power of 3, being able to bounce, for me, it was easier to bounce, to find the center when I had a bounce, like as bad as it got for me. I was like, I know that there's another side, so I can bounce off of that. But as far as as how I work with artists, is we start with vision work, and I'd say this for everyone, is you just start with, well, what is most important to you? Like when I was, having really hard moments, I'd be like, well, what is the only thing that I really want to be doing right now? And it was always my book. I kept coming back to my book. So I had this kind of shining light, and I do have a vision. My vision is to really is to create a world, be part of a world where there's no exploitation of artists, and the arts are considered equal, and I think that's my vision, and I've created that and crafted that. And during those hard times, I can cling to that. And it makes me feel good, because I'm aligned, within the Tao. And I think you can do that no matter who you are, whatever you believe. There is, what is most important to you? Whatever it is, that is your core, that is your center. And when you are suffering, they can't take that away from you. Nobody can take that away from you. It's inside of you. So no matter what your situation, it's hard to get, especially so for instance, you're hungry, right? Well, then your brain chemistry is being affected. And, this survival mentality, this survival brain, kicks in, and it's really hard to look at things from an outside perspective. But I'm saying in some ways you don't even have to. You just need to go within and try to find yourself. That's the most important work I think people can do first. You got to secure your oxygen mask first before you start trying to help the world, which I think a lot of people have always tried to do too. They're very eager to help the world, but you can't help the world until you help yourself. I really believe that. So I just say, go within and try to craft some kind of vision or something that is your, core in those rough times, and that will always be there for you. And for me, that's tapping into the Tao, tapping into this universal love. I felt it, so I know how to get back to it. For me, I have a practice of meditation, of breathing, as you say. I love the breath, is so powerful. So I really use that a lot. There's definitely tools too to be able to do this. That's just kind of the surface level, but there's a bunch of tools to get there. But I always say to people who don't meditate, you don't have have to meditate. Meditation to you could be working out, or it could be reading a book, or it could be something mindless, though, is what I try to tell people, because if you're thinking too much, it's harder to tap into your core. So it's really about quieting the brain, because your core is not in your brain, it's in your heart. So whatever you can do to quiet the brain and breathe into your heart center, and that love, that universal love, that's the way forward, and that's the moment. And then as long as you are safe and secure in that moment, you're good, you're fine. And you can go back to that at any time. It's hard, but it's there.
And the scripture says, hide thy word in your heart so that you won't sin against thee. Because Emelina, do you know when the fetus is developing, the tongue comes out of the heart?
No, I didn't know that. Oh, that's fascinating.
And so even the proverb that says, out of the mouth the heart speaks. And that is true.
Yes.
Because what's in your heart is what you're going to say, and it is how you're acting, because it's not coming from your fingers.
Right.
It's not coming from your nose. It's
or your brain.
Or your brain. It's coming, because you've heard the stories of people who've had heart transplants, and they feel and they think of things that the people who had the heart originally had.
Yes.
That's how powerful it is. And I also think about this, the scripture says, man looks at the outward appearance, but God sees a heart. So when you do something, that's the past. The present is in the heart.
Right. And that's alignment. When you are speaking from your heart, that is this alignment that I'm talking about. Absolutely. You know that the Egyptians, during mummification, they took out all the organs and mummified all the organs except for the brain. They didn't want the brain in the afterlife. And I think that speaks volumes. Yeah, because the heart is more important.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, there's different practices, but that was definitely one practice.
Well, I think another way is divinely appointed for such a time as this. And while you feel like you needed to have gotten it out at some other point, I think it's birthing when it's supposed to birth. Divine
timing.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I definitely see how it can soothe some of what's going on across the board, even for families who have lost loved ones. In asking, why am I here? And what is the role that I play, that I'm still here? And I have to carry on. And then how do I do it in this other way? And the only way that we can find that answer is in that quiet time that you talked about, of meditating and being available to hear.
Yes, and that's also why, by the way, art is so important, again, because, whether you're an artist or not, say you're just grieving and questioning, why am I here? Well, when you start to, I love art therapy, because when you start to create and you see what you've created, and then you see how people can react to art, it's like, oh, I'm actually making a difference. I've created something, this act of creation, whatever it is, even if it's a scribble, it's like that it's giving you power to express yourself, and that expression might mean something to somebody, so I think that's art, the arts are very powerful. And if you're grieving, I definitely think, or going through a hard time, art therapy is really powerful.
Oh, absolutely. And Josette talks about when she's sewing, sometimes she starts making something, but she's not sure what it's going to be. It just kind of evolves into this wonderful garment. And I think so many artists sit down at a canvas, or my sister Sharon Benjamin says that she gets up in the wee hours to write, as I do as well. And you start There's no way that you know what the end of the poem is going to be.
And that's okay.
Isn't it?
Yes, actually, that's magical to me because, again, in real life, we're so attached to deadlines and what the end goal is. And in art, it doesn't matter. That's the development never ends. So I say it is about development. It's about the process. That's where the magic happens, and like my favorite artists always describe their art as themselves as like a channel, which again is so powerful of just being able to let the art come through them, and it's because they can get into this mind state of being so open to source or, whatever you want to call it, to just working through them. And that's it feels good because it takes the pressure off of everyday life.
In the final time that we have, Emelina, my sister Hattie Duncan, who's also an artist, but didn't start till she was in her 50s. And she said her art came forth after she forgave.
Forgiveness.
Yeah. So in this space and time that we're in now, can you speak about how important that is? If we want it to flow, the light to flow, the creativity to flow, the visions to flow. One woman I talked to, who she said they were like $800,000 in debt, had a business, and they were just in this massive amount of debt. And she would just lie on the floor face down with her head covered. And she has now written books. She has a production company and a publishing company. But all of that came to her in that quiet time of face down, being available for source to fill her. But you have to get rid of all of anything that blocks the light, because the light can't come through.
Yes, that's the spiritual work, I think, is we get in our own way a lot. No matter what we're doing, and actually, I'd say that's the brain. I would also say it's the ego. A lot of my work is ego work. And just releasing and forgiving, this release, letting it go. That's when the real magic happens. We find ourselves fighting, like we're fighting. And at some point, like for me, I was like, what am I fighting? What am I fighting? And what if I just we fight for our truth, or we fight for what we believe is good, or our opinions a lot of times, and we're fighting for it. And we believe that it's important to fight because we're told it's important to fight. And, there's some truth in that, but there is power in letting go. And that is when you can channel. And that is when the magic happens. And that's when you can drop into the moment, because usually what you're fighting is either something that has happened in the past or something that you're worried about happening in the future. And we have no control over that. No control. So all we really have is right now, this moment. That's it. So and we don't have to fight for it. We have it. It is given to us. It is our right. It is given to us by source. It is our birthright when we're born. We just are. That's the Tao, And so we don't have to fight for it. And I think that's what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is that release of saying, I'm okay with just being me and just being here in this moment. And that's all I have to be. And then and then once you are grounded and in that space, then that's when you can start to think with your heart. And then you start to realize, it was silly that I wasn't forgiving, like you're only hurting yourself. You've heard that phrase of like, I forgot exactly the saying about how you're only hurting yourself.
Unforgiveness is like you drinking poison, thinking the other person is going to die.
Exactly. Yes. Oh, that was it. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it is. It's only hurting us. So, and that's what I had to come to. And I, even to this day, that's one of my mantras actually, is when I start to get frustrated or annoyed with somebody, I'm like, how is this serving me? It's not serving me a lot of times. And is it going to even make a difference? Does that person even care if I forgive them or not? It's like, No, usually it's just about me. It's always just about me and my issues and ego jumping in to get in the way of things. And the second I can focus in on breath and drop down into my heart, and forgiveness feels good. It feels much better than holding on to that grudge. So
Yeah, holding on to it. And it's, the heart, as we talked about, but the liver, in acupuncture and Chinese medicine, there's the understanding that every emotion that we have resides in an organ in our bodies.
Yes, I've heard that.
And the cleansing mechanism for our bodies is the liver. Well, when that gets toxic, the body gets toxic. But spiritually, when we don't forgive, our souls become toxic. Our spirit life becomes toxic because we are holding on. And it's such an insidious recruiting tool by darkness. Convince somebody to be ugly to you, and then you're ugly back to them.
It's what I call the mirror effect.
Yeah. Except we have to shine the light.
Yes. And, like if you want light in your heart, you got to shine it out to get it back.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Ivana Van Sant said, love without expectations.
I love that. Yes.
Which is really difficult to do because we all think that we're supposed to get something in return.
Right. Yeah. And I will say too, as another thing I'd like to throw out there is that, I don't blame anybody because blame is also toxic. And so, I talk a lot in my book about, I have it broken into 3 parts: sociology, psychology, and philosophy. And the sociological side of it is that we are raised in an environment that is teaching us to do all these things, and so it's a lot working against us. So part of forgiveness, a huge part of it, is forgiving ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
That's in some ways has got to come first, because you can't forgive somebody else until you forgive yourself. Yeah.
Right. I think we could probably talk for about 5 more hours.
Yeah, I know. This has been great, though. Lots of good stuff. Yeah.
So how do people find your book?
Okay, so my website is www.showgoesonproductions.com. The Show Goes On Productions is my company. And although actually I've connected Emelina.com to it. So you can also go to Emelina.com, which might be easier. Emileena. And everything is on there. I haven't released the book just yet. It should be there by the end of the month. But there is a mailing list you can sign up for that is now on my website under my blog section. Lots of good stuff on there. So yeah, please check out my website. I'm also on social media, all the socials. I'm at TSGO Prods, which is short for productions. So you can find me on all the socials. And then I randomly have a Twitter that's also my personal Twitter, which is at Emelina.
And so I should have gotten that before you. I should have gotten that from you beforehand, so I could have made a little banner. Well, Minister Royal Colbert has joined us. Forgiving, I'm looking at, he said, I'm looking at your website now.
Oh, great. Oh, good. Yeah, it's always a work in development. I am a DIY artist at the end of the day, so hopefully he can navigate it well. But under blog is where you can, I actually have a blog too, which my blog was kind of my scratch pad for the book. So I think there's some really great stuff in my blog too. So cool. Check that out. Yeah.
And the Reverend says, forgiving ourselves unapologetically.
Yes. Unconditionally. Yes. Yeah, I love that.
Unconditionally. And back to the scriptures, God forgives us as far as the east is from the west.
Yes.
And if we're entitled to that kind of forgiveness, then we must forgive in the same manner.
Yes. We are made in his image.
His likeness.
I love that. We are a piece of that.
Yeah. And so
yeah,
it is just really getting centered, as you have pointed out, Emelina, some great pieces of wisdom that you have shared with us this evening. I really, really appreciate you joining us. And thank you all who have joined us on YouTube and on Facebook. Thank you for your comments. And please like and share and make sure that you visit Emelina's website so that you can be there and um, find out exactly when the book is going to be released. And Emelina, you're doing that another way. You're not doing the whole book at the same time.
Oh no,
Real
that's
quick.
very exciting. Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I'm releasing it like an album, kind of like a single at a time. But there's 4 parts, and I'm going to release it a part at a time. And then at the end of the year, I'll release the whole thing as one. But it's the development process is the funnest part. So it's going to be cool, I think, to watch it kind of evolve, and then at the end to get the whole thing. So it's going to be multimedia at the end. But I'm starting with just the book part.
Excellent. Well, Josette is going to be a guest. She said, thanks, great conversation. She's going to be on to talk about her fashion show. And Pastor Royal Colbert is going to be on as well because he has 2 books that he has written.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
look forward to those.
Yes, yes. We just have such great, intelligent, and inspiring people who watch, who get inspired, and look forward to being inspired by them and through the guests that we're able to bring. So, Emelina, thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Pamela. And for all of your work as well with around forgiveness and for just being a very strong woman and role model and speaker. And you open your mouth and I'm inspired. So thank you
You are so
for taking
sweet.
the time to talk with me.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I know that there are going to be great things coming as a result of what the Creator has given you to pen. And I believe that it's going to go even deeper and further and broader than the artist that you thought, because we all have that art in us. So while you thought you were writing it just for entertainers, we're all artists. So
Yes.
you've written it for all of us.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, I hope.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Our host is inspiring as well. Oh,
I know. I
thank
agree.
you.
I
Thank you,
agree.
Pastor.
Yeah.
Well, we
We
will
couldn't
see
do it
you
without
all.
you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and for like collecting the stories, you're working like collecting the stories and finding the people and asking the questions, that's a really important thing. You're raising people up, I'm grateful because people need the help. We need to support each other more than ever.
And I'm a believer that a rising tide lifts all ships.
Yes, beautifully put. See, you're really great at that.
Oh, no, I read. I'm just quoting.
Yeah.
John F. Kennedy said that. President
Oh,
John F.
nice.
Kennedy said that a rising tide lifts all ships. And I believe that. I don't know if he was the first one to say it, but it's definitely true. And Rose Hummel, thank you so much. She
Hi,
said,
Rose. Yay.
Rose has been watching since the beginning. Good show. Thank you for watching, Rose.
Yeah,
Really
thanks for
appreciate
being
it.
here and supporting. Also, another spiritual coach.
Yes, Rose, I really appreciate it so much. Look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow.
Yeah.
Spiritual Biz coaching
Right.
session with Kimberly and everybody else. All right, good deal. So, everybody, thank you for joining us. We will see you Thursday at 7 p.m. for the Timbuktu report, and then we'll be back here every Monday for Sisters of Wellness. In the meantime, I'm Pamela Marshall at the Wellness Radio TV and at the Wellness Radio TV podcast. Thank you for joining us. And remember, there is healing at the well. Make it a great moment.
Amen. Thank you, Pamela.
You're
Bye, everyone.
welcome.